Hello, you're watching News Mongolia on MNB World and I'm your host, Jarasmat Shinjargar. Our top stories for today. The President of the Swiss Confederation, Viola Amherd, made a state visit to Mongolia. The Swiss President, Viola Amherd, visits the Chinggis National Museum. The projects and programs implemented by Japan in Mongolia will be presented. For the news, stay tuned. On the invitation of the President of Mongolia, Hursuhokhna, the President of the Swiss Confederation, Viola Amherd, paid a state visit to Mongolia from August 2nd to 4th, 2024. This visit marks a significant milestone in the diplomatic relations between the two nations, highlighting their commitment to deepening bilateral ties and cooperation.
During her state visit, the two heads of state signed a joint declaration between Mongolia and the Swiss Confederation. This declaration celebrates the achievements and successes of the past 60 years of cooperation and sets the future directions for the bilateral relationship. The motto of the historic 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations, Mongolia and Switzerland for Peace, underscores the foreign relations goals of both countries. The declaration includes commitments towards organizing high-level and reciprocal visits and consultative meetings, strengthening political mutual understanding and cooperation between the legislative bodies, and collaborating within the framework of international and regional stability initiatives. Additionally, both sides agreed to jointly mitigate climate change and desertification and expand cooperation aligned with the goals of their long-term development policies. The cooperation will extend to agriculture, health, emergency services, education, sports, and culture. The Foreign Minister of Mongolia, Batsitsig Batmukh, and the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Swiss Confederation to Mongolia, Yurk Buri, signed a Memorandum of Understanding on Democracy. This MOU outlines the scope of cooperation for implementing special projects and programs aimed at strengthening governance based on democratic values, including human rights, freedom, and the rule of law. Currently, projects such as strengthening parliamentary institutions and safeguarding democracy and human rights through legal reform of the Constitutional Court are being implemented in Mongolia. This reflects the shared commitment of Mongolia and Switzerland to promoting democracy and protecting human rights.
On August 2nd, 2024, the President of the Swiss Confederation, Viola Amherd, visited the Chinggis National Museum of Mongolia. This visit is part of her state visit to Mongolia, commemorating the 60th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the Mongolia and the Swiss Confederation.
The director of the Chinggis National Museum of Mongolia, Cholon, greeted President Viola Amherd and accompanying officials at the museum gates, offering a detailed tour of the many exhibits and halls. President Amherd toured the halls and exhibitions, learning about Mongolia's rich history and culture. To mark this historic occasion, she signed a book of honored guests of the museum. Mongolia and Switzerland established diplomatic relations on May 22nd of 1964. Over the past 6 decades, the two countries have developed strong ties based on mutual respect and cooperation. Switzerland has been a significant partner in Mongolia's development. The Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation has been active in Mongolia since 2001, focusing on sustainable development, rural livelihoods, and vocational education. Trade between Mongolia and Switzerland includes Mongolian exports of cashmere, wool, and minerals, while Switzerland exports machinery, pharmaceuticals, and watches to Mongolia. Both countries are working to expand economic ties and investment opportunities.
Now let's take a look at Mongolian current affairs. The Mongolian and Japanese Human Resources Development Center has announced that the Mongolian and Japanese Business Forum will be held on the 19th of this month. Approximately 150 guests from Japan and 200 guests from Mongolia will attend the forum, which will focus on information, communication, and innovation, as well as discussions on food, agriculture, light industry, and tourism. In addition, JICA, Japan's International Cooperation Organization, will present the projects and programs implemented in Mongolia. The Mongolian Kaizen Association will provide information about the introduction of the Kaizen movement in Mongolian companies. Government representatives, including the governor of the capital city and the mayor of Ulaanbaatar, Nimbatar, will be among the guests, and the ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary of Japan to Mongolia, Igawahara Masaru, will be participate. The forum is organized by the Japanese Chamber of Commerce in Mongolia, the Japanese University Graduate Association of Mongolia, the Mongolian Kaizen Association, and the Mongolian government, as well as non-governmental organizations. Thank you for staying with us. Now let's take a look at currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Next, our program will turn our attention to foreign news, partnered with international news agencies. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said at the weekly cabinet meeting in Jerusalem on Sunday that Israel's fight against terrorism continues all the time. He offered his condolences to the two families of the victims of this morning's stabbing attack carried out by a Palestinian in a Tel Aviv suburb and warned Iran that Israel is prepared for any scenario, both in defense and attack.
Tensions have soared following nearly 10 months of war in Gaza and the killing of two senior militants in separate strikes in Lebanon and Iran last week. Those killings brought threats of revenge from Iran and its allies and raised fears of an even more destructive regional war. Talking about the negotiations to release the hostages, Netanyahu said that until this moment, Hamas has not agreed to the most basic terms of the outline. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was among the growing voices internationally calling for a ceasefire in recent days, saying that it was the only way to begin to break the cycle of violence and suffering. Israeli protesters have been taken to the streets and blocked highways in Tel Aviv and other locations, calling on Netanyahu to immediately reach a ceasefire deal to bring the hostages held by Hamas and step down. The demonstrations were taking place as long-running efforts to broker a truce gained momentum early last month when Hamas dropped a key demand for an Israeli commitment to end the war. The militant group still wants mediators to guarantee a permanent ceasefire, while Netanyahu is vowing to keep fighting until Israel destroys Hamas' military and governing capabilities.
Religious leaders of all faiths joined International Olympic Committee's chief Thomas Bach and Paris 2024 President Tony Stangut for an interfaith ceremony to celebrate their shared values of solidarity and peace on Sunday.
The event held on the esplanade of Notre Dame Cathedral served as a tribute to the first interfaith meeting organized by modern Olympics founder Pierre de Coubertin 100 years ago in Paris. International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach asked people of all of faiths to call for a peace.
Therefore, I would like to thank the organizers, et en particulier vous, Monseigneur Gobillard, for accepting to bring us together.
Merci aux organisateurs d'avoir accepté de nous réunir ce matin.
Just like Coubertin did 100 years ago, to highlight that faith and sport can complement each other.
I want to mention what happens in the opening ceremony because in France there were not so many people who felt hurt. It was more international. But we need to mention that, and we need to mention that the organizers, the Olympic Committee and the COJO said that they don't want to hurt people, and that's not their intention, and said if that happens, they give their excuses for that. So they ask for excuses for that.
The event comes in the wake of strong reactions from a number of religious leaders across the world criticizing some scenes at the opening ceremony last week. Paris Olympics organizers have said there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group, but rather to celebrate community tolerance. French Bishop Emmanuel Cobillard, special representative of the Holy See for the 2024 Paris Olympics, echoed this sentiment on Sunday.
Now let's take a look at weather forecast for world major cities. Alright, that's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you on Tuesday with more news and updates. Goodbye.